Hey everyone, Geoffrey here, and today I have Christopher Blundell with me. And before I start, guys, I just want to give you some disclaimers here. I'm in a new house, so you can tell blank shelves and everything like that. They're still building it, so there might be workers coming in. You might hear some noises, but ignore that. We'll try to be as quiet as possible. Might also be a bit echoey here. I haven't installed the curtains yet and some soundproofing, so bear with us. I think we tried to make it as good quality as possible, but bear with us. Thank you. And another disclaimer, guys. So Christopher is actually one of my employees. And so Christopher started with me probably about 2 years ago, Chris, will you join the program?
Yep.
So it started with me as a client 2 years ago. And you're about to see his story here, what he went through, how much he's learned. And what's interesting is that we actually interviewed about 60 plus people for this role right here. And we have 1,600 people in the community right now, in the program right now. And of the 1,600 people, and of the 60 people we deem to be as super A game high players, Chris was the top one, right? So the reason why I'm saying this, guys, is to address the people who might say prematurely, oh, because Chris works for Jeff, whatever he says is just to sell me on whatever Jeff sells to get money, whatever it is. But it's not the case. Right? I wanted to get Chris on here because Chris is one of the most insightful people you can ever know. He's one of the most knowledgeable people about relationships you can ever meet. And so I don't want you to even subconsciously discount whatever Chris is saying here just because he works with the company, etc. Because we're going to talk about some amazing insights here. I don't want you to miss a thing. Okay, guys? So with that said, I guess, Chris, let's start with, what was your life like? And what were you like when you first joined my program as a client 2 years ago?
The word I'd probably use is pitiful, full of victim mindset. Just always, I was probably one of the most negative people, cynical. And even before when I was watching your videos, I always had these little things in the back of my mind of this guy's fake. He's like, there's something weird, shifty going on. I was just so negative about everything in life. I couldn't enjoy anything. All of my relationships broke down. And I was probably, to be honest with you, at the one of the lowest points in my life by a long shot.
Tell me more about that, right? Because so at that point, yeah, tell me more about your situation at that point in time, if you want to divulge that.
Yeah. So, literally weeks away from divorce, everything was falling apart. I was blaming everyone but myself. I tried all of these relationship programs and therapy and all this sorts of stuff. None of it was sticking. I was just in this spiral. And I think that the lowest point that I had, and I don't think I've ever told you this, but this is true, was I was sat for Thanksgiving. Obviously, I'm not from the States, but I live here. Sat there for Thanksgiving on my own, eating a door-dashed McDonald's, just crying to myself, just feeling so sorry for myself.
Yeah.
And that was the point where I was like, and that was actually the point where I was like, there's got to be something different. I've got to be doing something wrong here. To be sat here on my own, eating a crappy cheeseburger on Thanksgiving, I think I'm the problem. And that's where that was the moment that I was like, okay, I'm going to pull the trigger on this Geoffrey guy. Even though I was still so cynical in my head of this could just be absolute horseshit.
So I think before the interview, you were telling me how you didn't want to divulge too much about how bad your situation was at that point in time, like what your partner was doing at that point in time and what was happening in the relationship, just how hopeless things were and why you felt like you were in the lowest point possible, because you didn't want to do disservice to her in any way. And I understand that, and I respect that. So I just want to kind of cap this off, guys, in saying, we enroll 1,600 people per year. And every one of those people, just like Chris, they wait until things are very dire before seeking my help. I'm going to show you actually a comment here, just a pop up somewhere, with someone who was like saying exactly this, right? He was in a program for the last 6 months, this guy, and he's been completely stonewalled, zero contact, and he's finally getting his results now, despite zero contact. And when someone asks him, like, what would you do differently? If you could look back in the 6 months that you've been in the program, what would you have done differently? What he said was, I wish I would join sooner. I wish I didn't wait till things were very dire before seeking Jeff's help. But unfortunately, people do that because until the pain level is high enough, you're not going to be motivated enough to actually seek high quality help. That is usually expensive. That usually takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of energy, as we will talk about here in this interview. So for people to think their situation is a bit unique, it's a bit absurd. Because again, we enroll 1,500 plus people per year. All of them wait till things are very dire. And dire meaning that they're usually where Chris was at, right? Where usually very little contact, almost no contact. Their partner has given up hope completely, tells them every single day, please give up on me. Please stop trying. Everything that you can hear, they have faced. So I hope people understand that. That's why we say no situation is unique. And we'll talk about that in a bit later, why no situation is unique, right? But now, obviously, you're in a very different place in your relationship. And you tell me, like, we actually had a burger the other day because Chris actually moved to Houston with me. And we're talking about over burger, how amazing. Like, you cannot say anything bad about this relationship right now. I guess tell me more about that. Tell me how that feels. Tell me what that's like.
So the reason why I hesitate right now is because I'm very conscious of when I was looking at the interviews and testimonials and stuff, and I got super suspicious when everyone was like, oh, my relationship's amazing. And again, my cynical mind was like, yeah, okay, whatever. So I get hesitant because what I want to say is that it's by far the best relationship I've ever had. Like super unbelievably happy communication. We talk about everything, conversations that I've never had in any relationship before. That's what I want to say, but again, I don't want it to come across as like salesy and like, oh my God, like this is incredible and like woo. But it's the truth. Like it is the truth. And not just my romantic relationship, but like relationship with my family, my friends, everything has changed. Everything has changed in my life. And that's the truth of it. That is the truth of it.
Yeah. And I guess tell me more about the feelings in this state, right? When you're in the state of full safety, full admiration, full goal alignment, etc. If you could, I know it's a vague question to ask here, but what's the feelings like? If you could contrast it to like how your previous situations were like.
I mean, I know we've spoken about this before. I have to catch myself because I had so many problems in all of my previous relationships, just arguments and fights and miscommunications and holding stuff in and gaslighting and all of these problems. And then when all of that dissipates and you have really healthy communication, able to navigate through anything that life throws at you, you start to get this new problem, which is like, you're kind of looking around and being like, I'm happy, but I'm not used to feeling happy. So this is kind of weird. So then your brain sort of goes, is there a secret problem? No, there isn't a secret problem. But it's a new problem where you're just, you get this very occasionally, this question of like, things shouldn't be this good. Where's the problem? Where's this hidden problem going to come out? But it's not, it's just,
it's
happiness.
It's interesting you say that because that's what we call in the program, in my life, I call that happiness anxiety, right? It's when, and a lot of our clients face this, a lot of I face this, where they initially reconcile, right? And things are really, really good for the first time. And things are really, really sweet. Like there's no arguments, things are actually happy. But then it's almost like, imagine when you go on like a vacation, for example, right? And In the vacation, you're like, wait, I'm actually happy. Like, there's no fires, there's no one hounding me, there's no boss that's hating me, there's no like crisis to manage. But then in the vacation, you have this compulsion to check your email, for example, to go like, I'm too happy right now. This doesn't feel right. And so you manufacture some crap to worry about, to think about. You go back to work, for example, and you think about work, for example, and you think about the problems at home. And that's kind of what happiness anxiety feels like. I felt the same way with my business too. The first time we made like 100,000 a month, 200,000 a month. Now we're at 300,000 a month. Every one of those milestones, I always wake up in a cold sweat sometimes because like I was still having PTSD in a way from the previous times when I was broke, when I was making no money, when money was such a difficult thing. That's what you're referring to, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you know, you've even said like, Chris, don't make shit up. like don't make shit up. Just enjoy the happiness. And it's true. Like it's you know, it's only occasional, but yeah, there's just those moments where you're just like, this is what a good life feels like.
Yeah. Let's talk about that more a bit later because I want to dive deeper into that. But I want to talk about, so obviously you were a client with me for a year and a half or plus, a year and a half plus. And 3 months ago, or now 3.5 months ago, you joined as part of my team. I guess my question to you would be, why did you choose to work with me?
So, I mean, you know more than anyone, like how much I lived the program, regardless, and always wanted to better my learning of the principles and my execution and everything. You know, and I had success in so many parts of my life anyway. But what I could see with you and the program was that, you know, my life had taken such a shift, and it was the direction that I was so passionate about wanting to go in, and wanted to help others get through what I went through as well. Because I've been through it. Like, you know, like you say, no situation is unique. It's really not. It's really not at all. And I've been through, you know, I was coming in later now in the program and seeing these newbies going through the same stuff that I went through. And I was already jumping in and being like, hey, like, trust Jeff on this. Your situation isn't unique. Like, we see success from your situation from worse than your situation. Don't worry about it. Just keep going. So that was my passion. That was like, okay, I'm already wanting to help people through that situation. You know, and then I got the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. And, you know, what's funny too is when we were, actually, before I go there, right? So you went from the position where before you joined the program, you were basically saying, Jeff is freaking bullshit. And you actually told me this over burgers, right? You're like, I didn't trust you at first. There's no way this young Asian kid can know and can help me. And you were thinking about how dire your situation is. But then as a client, you very quickly realized, oh shoot, like nothing is unique here, right? This is the real deal. What were the key observations, the key mindset shifts, the key events that happened once you joined the program that made you go, oh crap, I need to get my crap together here?
Very, very quickly, I think. Like you said, like even when I first joined, it's still in the back of my mind. I was like, if this isn't spectacular, I'm going to immediately email I was like, 7 days is a good amount of time. I'm going to email him and ask for a refund. Like, if this isn't like perfection. Very quickly, I got that fear of like, oh my God, this is so dense. My mind couldn't wrap around it. But then I think module 2 was where everything changed around, and I was like, this is work. And the only way that I'm going to change anything about my life is by putting in this work. And I had that choice, the fork in the road. I can either walk out and beg for my refund, or I can double down and do this the way that it's supposed to. And once I saw the amount of work and then the amount of work that other members were putting in, I was like, and the success that they were getting, I was like, there's only one option here. There's only one way that I can change my life. And that's to trust Jeff and the program.
Yeah. Because obviously you joined 2 years ago. So at that point in time, we still gave people refunds. Now we tell people, right, when they first join, it's like, hey, before you sign this, before you give us your money right now, just know there's no refunds. Because the only way you can get a refund, the only way you would ask for a refund is if you did not do the work or if you joined for the wrong reasons, right? Because we know that if you do the work and if you surrender to this program, we're going to take your life further than you can imagine. And we know that because of people like you, right? So you start off very, very skeptical, then immediately you will see, you will know. And I think that seeing, that observing is a twofold thing. One is, okay, this information is not only dense, but it's also it's complex, but also it's presented to you in a way where you can sequentially understand it. You can sequentially see how you can grow to that peak, right? But the second thing, also the bigger thing is, you also see other people playing at a very, very high level in their lives, the way they think, the way they operate. It's almost like, when I recently kind of joined this mastermind of 100 people. This is with Sam, right? Not Sunny, because Chris knows which masterminds I'm a part of. And these are people who are making 10 million, sometimes even close to 100 million a year, right? And the way they act, the way they do things is so different, right? If you come in there and you play and you think at a low level, it'll become evidently clear to you and you feel that embarrassment right away. And that embarrassment wakes you up and go, oh my gosh, this is my competition. I got to step up. And I think that was what you felt when you first joined too.
Yeah. It was, you come in with all the swagger and like that's what it was like. And that's been my problem throughout my life, being like, oh, I know this. And like, I don't know whether this, this kid is going to really do anything. Like this could be a load of BS. And you come in with that swagger, thinking that you know everything you're like a level 2. And then you're like, I can get to a level 5 easy. And then like you said, you wake up and you're like, oh, this is worlds apart. And the members that we have are from such a wide range, but they're successful in so many things in their life. And you're like, wow, they have so much success, but they had the same problems that I had, but they've changed it. And if I want to even remotely get close to them, then I'm going to have to do the same thing that they are doing. I can't live my life the way that I've been living it.
Yeah.
And that was the wake up call of like, I have to change. I have to change and put in the work.
I think what's most amazing to me, Chris, and I don't know if you feel the same way as like now a coach in the community as well, is like you said, you have these very successful individuals in their career. I mean, they have so much else they can do with their time. But we gave these people, everyone of our clients, we give them lifetime access, right? And even after they're reconciled, even after they got the results, they're still in the program. They're still in the group, giving advice to the newbies, giving advice to people like you at that time. And they're trying to rescue people, right? And that's, to me, that's very touching because that's like the biggest flex as a coach for me, right? It's like you change someone's life so much to the point where even after they reconcile, even after they do everything, they can do so much more with their time. But they see that the best value of my time is helping these people because of how much this program has helped me too. I want to do the same, right? And in fact, like the 60 plus people that actually was your competition in your interview, right? I would say 60% of them actually reached out to me saying, I want to work for you. Same thing as Jason Newman, right? Jason Newman, the first 3 months, he said like, Jeff, one day I want to work for you. And it's the same thing here. That to me, I find the most amazing.
Yeah, and because these people could just, they never would, but if they wanted to, they could coast. They're at such a high level, they could coast forever and still have an incredible life. But they choose, when you release a new version or a new module, they come back and they're like, great, new information, great, fantastic. And they'll come back and they'll go back to the course, they'll learn, they'll share their learnings and stuff like that. They don't have to do that. They choose to do it. And like you said, like that is the biggest flex, because they're doing that out of choice. And that shows how ingrained and how much of a lifestyle all of the members make it.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. So I did want to talk about kind of some key takeaways here. I think the biggest one is the happiness anxiety thing again. And I think it's not just me who tells you, dude, relax, everything is fine. It's also your partner. You tell me the story of, sometimes, when you become a coach for this program, you told me this problem of you get sucked into people's lives. You get sucked in. You're trying to help like 80, 100 people a day. Like their requests. It's almost like office hours, 80 people coming in a day, right? Trying to get help from you. And your relationship can be like super great in the back end. But when you are in there, you put yourself in people's lives and you really feel what it feels like to be in their shoes, and you try to help them. You kind of like go back in the pits of hell kind of thing, and you come back up again, right? And you're trying to bring people up. It's an exhausting experience. And I know that firsthand because I had your job before, right? I was the one coaching. And your partner was telling me, and your partner was telling you at that point, she was saying like, dude, relax, like everything is fine. Like, what were you doing to make her say that? What were you?
There's a phrase, there's a British phrase, which is, don't over egg the pudding. And that's the kind of, it basically is like, don't, like you said, don't make shit up. Don't do too much. Like you can sort of step back a little bit. And I think that's the thing that, I was so disconnected in previous relationships. So head up my ass, had no idea what was going on, like didn't even care, was just so far away. Whereas now, very connected, very in tune, and almost like a doctor, where you're sort of like, okay, oh, I've got a, is that a rash? Is that what is that there? And, and it's just like, dude, it's all right. It's all right. This is just life. And I think that's, they're those moments of happiness, anxiety, where I'm like, I'm happy. This is great. Am I sure? Yeah, you are sure. Oh, okay. Okay, cool. Right.
Yeah. But you also brought up something very interesting, which is what we refer to in our program, in a lot of our videos, as like successful success, right? Getting to that point. And so just for people who don't understand this concept, there's really 3 levels of success that people go through. The first level, the lowest level, is you getting no success at all, of course. Let's call that level 0. No, the first level is what we call failure success, right? That's the level where you're getting some success. Maybe in terms of like reconciliation, right? You learn some tactics from the web. You learn some things to say. You learn like boundaries, for example, 4 horsemen, smart contact, whatever it is. And you try it. Now, you don't really know why that works. You don't really know the mechanics behind it. You don't really know why you should do it. You just do it because someone told you to. Some guy on the internet or some woman on the internet, right? So you do it, and suddenly you get like short-term success. But you don't really know how to get there. Again, you don't really know the principles, the premises behind that success. It's almost like, throwing darts. And one happens to land in the bullseye, and you go, yeah, I won. But you can't replicate that, right? Yeah. That's the first level. And that first level is the worst level. Because I know a lot of entrepreneurs, for example, right, who they just throw darts in the wall and somehow they made it big. But then they can't sleep at night. Because if you don't know how to replicate your success, you don't know it's going to come crumbling back down again. Same thing for relationships, right? I have a lot of people who come to the program having had some sort of small reconciliation, for example, but they can't sleep at night because they don't know how to sustain it. If I ask them like 5 years from now, will you still be where you are? I don't think they can say for sure.
Right.
So level 1 success is that. Level 2 success is what we call successful failure. And this is the process of learning. when you start to make mistakes, when you start to, make some errors here and there, but then a successful failure because you actually learn from that failure. You actually learn from those mistakes, which brings you to level 3, which is what we call successful success. That's when you get the success, but you know how to get there. You know how to replicate that. And I think the PTSD of happiness anxiety gets formed for you in level 1. That's when you were like, oh, I'm getting some success. It seems good so far. Like I'm getting my honeymoon period. It's good in the beginning of the relationship. But then everything suddenly crumbled down without you knowing how it crumbled down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very scary experience for a human being. What do you think?
And it is, yeah. And it's funny. It's the way that I think that I can maybe put that out to anyone watching, analogy wise, is, after you like graduate, you've been through college, whatever it is, but you have those occasional nightmares where you're like, oh my God, I didn't do my homework. I didn't finish my dissertation. I did whatever it is. It's like that, right? Where it's like you strived so much, even though you've gone past and you know how to do it. There's those flashes of like, hold on a minute, do I have my school bag? And then you wake up and you're like, what the fuck?
Right.
It's kind of like that. But like this is the thing with the program is that another analogy I think which really works is when you're learning like multiplication tables, and it's like 6 is a 36, and you learn the answers, you learn the outcomes, but you're not actually learning how to do that math. Whereas the program teaches you whatever multiplication math equation that comes along, you're not memorizing answers, which is what all of these other relationship programs out there do. They give you scripts and stuff like that. This is actually teaching you how to do math, how to do equations. It's teaching you how, whatever problems come along, how to deal with them, process them, solve them, and create successful success at the end of the day, because you know how to do math. You're not memorizing answers.
Now, that's a beautiful analogy, because that's also the key to confidence, right? Because like the main difference between level 1 success and level 3 success is confidence. It's actual confidence. The first level, there are people who they have to lie to themselves all the time to make them feel confident, right? And this lie often comes as denial, as defensiveness. So sometimes we talk to some people, right? And we try to ask people like, hey, can you replicate your success? What issues do you want to work on for yourself? And the immediate answer they say is, I don't have anything.
Right.
Yeah, I can get the success. But then in the back of our heads, we're like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, you reached out to us. You told us that you needed help. You told us that you were struggling. You just told us in 2 sentences ago that your partner doesn't trust your changes, doesn't trust you, doesn't feel safe, that your communication is crap, whatever it is. So how can you say you know how to get there? And if you're at level 1, you have to lie to yourself, because you have to keep yourself afloat somehow. You have to cope with that. You have to keep yourself confident, right? The real results aren't there, so I can't get my confidence from the results. So I lie to myself to get my own confidence.
They're faking it till you make it.
Basically. But then the third one is what we call real quiet confidence, right? That's what the confidence where like you don't have to talk about how amazing things are right now. It's like, dude, the results speak for itself. Like, watch this interview and see how much I know, kind of thing, right? And that's real confidence, because like the math example again, one way is you could, like you said, memorize 1 times 1 all the way till 999 times 999. I mean, that's a lot of combinations. Then you can show up to your test and hope that, okay, let's see if I have the right multiplication table. Or you can learn how to do math and think to yourself, I don't give a crap what questions the test is going to have, what scenarios I'll be put under. I don't care how many layers of multiplication I need to do. I know how to do math. Just give it to me. I'll figure it out on the spot. That's real confidence. And that's what I think you're at. You're saying you're at right now. And that's the confident feeling that's so amazing to feel. That's like driving the ship, right?
Yeah, because it's so, I mean, like you said, it's so different from the way that I used to live my life, which was pretending that I knew all the answers and like always had to have a response to whatever, anything that came to me. And it actually just made it worse, because I just BS my way through life with the hope that I would never get figured out. But of course you get figured out because you're BSing, everyone. Whereas now any problem in relationships, life, whatever it is, it's like it's not that I know the answer, but I again have the process to be able to get there. And that's the difference. Knowing that like whatever life throws at me, I don't have to fake my way through it. I just have to figure it out, and I have the process to do that.
Yeah. But it's also interesting to view this from your partner's perspective too, because if you're level 1, right, that kind of fake confidence is very, very obvious. Not only is it obvious when you take your actions, when you say something, it doesn't sound like you're saying what you actually mean. You're just saying what you think you need to say or what you think you need to do here. And so it reveals itself by the active action that you do, but it also reveals itself in your reactions too, right? Because let's say your partner doesn't take it well, whatever you said. Then whenever you get the resistance, if you are relying on those scripts, it's going to be much slower for you to go like, hold on. Let me figure out like, okay, this is the problem. If this is the problem, let me go to my dictionary to figure out what the answer is. Right. But you can't do that on the spot. So during those reactive moments, the on the spot moments, you're not going to know what to do. And so you make more mistakes and you further worsens the cycle.
Dig yourself further into the hole that you already started.
And it just stinks. Like it sucks to be around someone like that, right? Who is at level 1, but they don't know what they're doing. They're making mistakes. They're making you miserable. But because they're a level 1, because they're so insecure about their success, they cannot even admit their mistakes. That's the worst part. It's like you cannot even admit your mistakes.
Like a drowning person being like, you're like, hey, I'm coming to help you. No, I'm not drowning. I'm not drowning. As the water is just like, it's like, what are you doing, dude? Like, this is ridiculous. And you're just so stubborn. You're just going, no, everything's fine. Everything's fine. I know how to swim.
Yeah. And I think when you were at number 3 too, when you're level 3, your partner can sense that you're in number 3 because you have this like this very assuring confidence about you, where someone, for example, like to give you an example, right? We were going to New Orleans to visit Jason this week, and there was so much logistical issues because we have a few friends coming in and we only had like Friday night, Saturday and Sunday morning to really like meet everyone, everything like that. Logistically it was so hard. And my partner was like stressing a bit. She was like, oh my God, I'm worried. But then me having this confidence of just like, I don't know what will come our way, but we'll figure it out on the spot. We always do. That gives people like the assurance. That makes people, that inspires people to not panic as well, right? That trust, that safety is there. Same thing for my business. Like, I don't know if you see this in me, right? Where something can be worrying, like, oh, I don't know if this problem is going to come in the future. We don't know what will come our way, but we have this mentality of like, I don't care what comes our way. We're going to figure it out. We always do figure it out. And that can only happen when you have that process, that formula for understanding how to think, how to operate properly. And we cannot have that feeling of quiet confidence when we memorize the multiplication table in a way, memorize scripts, etc. Right?
Yeah, because if it's not that exact cookie cutter problem, everything falls apart. And that's the difference, like you said, between trying to memorize outcomes rather than figuring out the formula and the process to get to those outcomes.
Right. And so guys, just to take away from this, just to wrap this up, right? Like, you can definitely get many programs and watch many videos that gives you like tactics and scripts, etc. Right? And you can get some short-term success with that. But understand that in your relationship, you're going to be faced with infinite different permutations of what could happen. And so you are eventually going to meet a problem that your scripts does not address any longer. And in those times, you're going to need to know what to do and how to do it on the spot. And if you don't know the process for example, the frameworks, the internal shifts, how to shift yourself internally, how to converse properly, we'll talk about this later, then you're always going to be sleeping with one eye open. Because you're always going to be wondering, are there something that I'm missing that will crumble everything again? And the only way to stop sleeping with one eye open, guys, the only way to have that assuredness about yourself, about your relationship, is if you get that feeling of you driving the ship yourself. You have your hands on the steering wheel. And the only way you can do that is if you understand the deeper process behind it. So not memorizing scripts, but understanding the principles, understanding the process, etc. Now, the other thing I want to talk about too, Chris, is also this notion of being a performer too. Because we have this saying in the program, don't master something until you can get it right. Master something until you can't get it wrong, right? And this kind of goes very closely with what we talked about before, which was what really counts are the moments where you are put in the spot. Your partner tells you a problem, your partner resists you, says something that you don't like, for example, right there. The problem is right in front of you. What do you do then, right? Can you improvise your way to success? Can you think your way on the spot? Or do you need to rely on scripts? Tell me what that feeling is like for you and how that progression of how you went from the scripted guy to eventually understanding how to do on the spot. And what was that like for you?
So the first thing that I, before joining, was like, obviously looked at your YouTube stuff, and I spoke like you, right? From the YouTube videos, and had some bits and pieces where I was like, oh, that's nice. I like that little thing that he just said, or whatever it is. And felt like that was enough to carry me through life, right? But I was saying stuff like, I understand. And I was like, okay, that's a good thing to say in a conversation. I understand. And then I remember at one point, I was like, yeah, I understand. And it was like, do you actually understand? And I remember this feeling of like my whole entire world crumbling because I didn't have an answer. I didn't know how to react to, do you understand? Because I didn't have this like this thing to say, right? So obviously being on the program and going through everything and getting myself to a state where, like you said, practicing like a performer, it changed everything for me to be able to never have that feeling again where I'm dumbfounded in any conversation or any situation, because I've done it so many times that no matter what, like you said, no matter what situation rises, I can do it. I've been there. It's like basketball, it's like you practice dribbling, passing, shooting, you do that enough. It doesn't matter where you are on the court or where the other team members are. Like you have the muscle memory to do this. So you don't need to memorize what it's like to pass from this corner or shoot from this corner. You when you practice like a performer, you get all of that flexibility to be able to handle any situation. But it takes that attitude. And you say on the course, you practice not until you can get it right, you practice until you can't get it wrong. And that's a different mindset.
Yeah.
Anything.
And it's interesting too, because if you look at this in terms of a relationship context too, let's look at, let's say basketball versus relationship, because they're both the same, right? You'll have certain skills and your job is to perform in the key moments. And at basketball, your performance is about physical performance, like moving around the court and shooting the basket, eventually driving to the basket, etc. In the relationship, your performance is more mental. It's more emotional performance, right? And driving the conversation, etc. Now, if you look at a newbie basketball player who understands the game conceptually, but they don't know how to play it experientially, right? I could read 10,000 books on basketball and playing basketball. If I never step to the court, I will never know what it's like to actually play basketball. I'm going to be shit when it comes to the basketball court, right? And the same thing here. A lot of people, I think, they learn relationships in a very conceptual way. You did it, right? You read a lot of books. You learned theory from therapists and experts, etc. But I don't think you knew how to synthesize and experience that and how to play it out in real life, right? Tell me that. Like, why did you fall for that? Like now that we talked about it, right? Conceptual knowing, experiential knowing is a vast distance. It's so obvious. But why was it? And back then, when you were stuck in your conceptual knowing, why did you just accept that to be like, this is good enough?
I mean, like you said, like I read so many books on communicate, like every book on communication, and it didn't do anything. Like it didn't do anything, but I knew it, and I could repeat it back to you now, but it just didn't click. Same with relationships. You know, you've got all the Gottman and love languages and all that sort of stuff. Wonderful ideas, like, and they are really amazing ideas, but it doesn't mean anything unless you put it into practice. And that's, you know, and putting it into practice from a book to actually doing something, making it a habit, making it part of your life, they're two totally different things. And that's why things like, you know, counseling, whatever, like it's great because you can tell someone, hey, next time you're in an argument, stay calm. It's great advice. Wonderful. Actually doing it, from just being told to do something to doing it, that's just worlds apart. And that's why it doesn't work. You know, when you get marriage counselors or relationship counselors saying, hey, just do this. Well, yeah, they know it, but they don't do it because it's, like you said, experientially knowing something, taking it from the back of your mind to the front of your mind in that moment is almost impossible to do. It's impossible to do.
It's interesting, right? So like, I can name so many analogies of this. And I think what makes the big leap between conceptual knowing and experiential knowing is really about the unintended consequences, the unseen problems, the unseen nuances of what it takes to actually do it, right? So a great example of this is like with business, right? I joined a coaching program, like the first one that like before I even started this business, I joined a coaching program and they told me about how to do business, how to do sales, how to like track your business, how to market yourself, how to create a great program, etc. And when you see it all in like that, it's simple. It seems so simple. It seems so straightforward. It's like, you just do this, man. You say this. If the person says this, you say this, right? If this happens, you do this. But it wasn't until I actually started to do the business itself where I realized this is not easy. There's so many like nuanced problems, like specific problems that I can't even articulate sometimes. That just becomes a problem. And I'm sure people have seen this before, where before you do something, before the first time you do something, right? Right now, we just started building a house. In theory, it sounds so simple. But there's so many little nuances that unless you've built a house before, unless you've started a business before, unless you've done it before, you will never know what those problems are.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know what it's like for you. Maybe it's for your career right now. Maybe it's for parenting, right? I'm sure people have this experience where at first, before you did it, it seems so simple, but when you actually do it, it's so complex. There's so much more complexity to it. It's the same thing with relationships too. You can read about it all day long and it can seem simple. Like the 5 love languages, right? We talk about that. And it surfaces is very simple. But then we made a video on this and I'll put it down below in the description somewhere about our video on the 5 love languages. And I realized like, no, there's actually more nuances to it that makes the actual application of it a lot harder. And it's also those blind spot mistakes where you don't even know those are mistakes sometimes. Those are the pitfalls sometimes with the 5 love languages, for example. And that's the vast distance. And so what we do in the program, guys, is we see the program like a gym, right? This is a space where you're surrounded by coaches and mentors where you can take your knowledge. Not only are you going to learn like conceptually very different things than what most people give you, but we're going to push you all the way to the experiential knowing. We're going to treat this program like a gym where you can practice your frameworks, the way you speak. you can practice your internal shifts in the moment, and we'll give you mechanisms for that. So that when it comes to the actual performance, when you are actually talking to your partner, when you're actually faced with real life scenarios, you're not dumbfounded anymore. You're like, whatever nuances, whatever specific things comes, I don't really care. I'll figure it out. I can figure it because I have done it multiple times, 100 times before. Right? I mean, tell me your experience about what it's like now as a coach, right? Seeing people who are only at the conceptual knowing part, maybe even before the conceptual knowing part, and having the experience of like pushing them to the experiential knowing, becoming a performer, etc. What is it like watching, observing that now?
It's interesting because, you know, one of the first things that you learn on the program is you learn how to learn, right? And I think so many, and again, other relationship programs and courses and things like that is something where it's like, okay, I can kind of put this on in the background and do some other stuff, make dinner and just have it on kind of thing. And sometimes people come and join the program and try to do that, right? Where they're like, okay, I'll have it on while I'm driving or whatever it is. And they don't get to that experiential sort of side of things. And then they get all the way down. They're like, hey, I'm failing here. What's going on? And it's like, yeah, we've been telling you along the way, here's how you need to be doing it. And you didn't listen. So, you know, it's interesting to see getting people from a place of undoing their previous, the way that they learn, the way that they do things, and actually getting them experiential, hands-on, taking action, right? And that's the difference, is that, yeah, we can learn all of this stuff. You could sit and have your course just wash over you and it'd be wonderful. But unless you actually do the practical steps, take action, it's not going to do anything for you. And pulling people and coaching people and nudging them and getting them to that place is it's an interesting point in the journey, really, to get people to do that.
Let me ask you a hard question here, okay? Because now obviously you have reached a point where you're a performer now. You're there. But there was a point in time when you weren't there, when you were stuck at conceptual knowing, but you were content with that. You thought that was enough. Well, now that you know experiential knowing and performance mindset, looking at that, you cringe at that. You're like, what the fuck? Like, how did I even think that was enough? That wasn't even close to enough. I'm trying to understand, right, for the newbies, for people who are listening to this, there's a lot of people listening to this who are saying, like, I look at all my what I conceptually know right now, and I'm convinced that's enough. The same way you were convinced that that's enough. Why do you think you were so blinded to what that possibility was, I guess?
I think the main thing that happens, and I think it happens on everyone's journey, is that you see where you've been, where you start, and then you get some progress and go, wow, go me. I've jumped from level 1 to level 5. That's awesome. Like, I've done so well and I understand this. And do you know what? Like, people are saying that I've changed and I'm different. That's great. And I'm really proud of myself. But then we sort of come along and they're like, hey, that level 5, it's not really anything. Like, there's level 50, there's level 100, there's no level cap on this. I think that's the first sort of stepping stone where the program really clicks. Once you realize that you're antithetical, to think truly antithetically, you will always be missing something. There's always a next level. There's always a way to improve, to iterate, and to continually improve your progress. And I think that was the moment for me where I had a point where I was like, I've done really well. Like my relationship with my family is really good, and like cool, like job done. But I hit a point where I had a couple of weeks where I kind of coasted, to be honest with you, and things started to wobble. And I had a really bad interaction with a family member where I was like, damn, maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was.
Mm.
And that was the point where I really, really skyrocketed my leveling up
Yeah.
and the work.
And if your experience kind of mimics a lot of other people's too, it's almost like I plant the seed in you through my videos, etc. That like, hey, dude, like whatever level 5 you think is good, just a level 50, man. And that kind of like plants a seed in you in a very logical way, though. I don't think it drives you to do anything really, emotionally to do anything, because you're still content with your level 5.
Yeah.
But then I think going back to what you said earlier, when you join the program and you actually witness people playing at level 50 to 100, and you witness that, you feel that, and you feel the embarrassment of like you not being there, you being at level 5, suddenly you cannot hold on to that lie anymore.
Yeah.
Like for you to hold on to the lie would take some amazing stubbornness. So you have to just let go of that BS. And then to see also the outcomes that other people were getting at level 50 to 100. And you look at your outcomes that you're getting at level 5, you're like, how the hell did I think this was good?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you had to see and witness that community, other people playing at that level before you can feel it. You can experientially feel it. I can tell you 100 times a day, that's a level 50, that's a level 50. You're not going to believe me ever. Right?
Until, like you said, until you see the top members, the members that are getting the outcomes and stuff, and you start to then click in your head and go, well, am I as good as I think I am? Am I really truly that good? Because my interactions are not as successful. My outcomes are not there in that same way. And again, it becomes a choice where you can sit there and go blame everyone else, everything else in life, and start to be a victim, start to put the blame on everything outside of yourself. Or you can look at yourself and go, yeah, am I as good as I think I am? How can I improve? Can I iterate? Of course I can, because there's proof out there that other people are. So it's that acceptance of reality of like, okay, I need to face up to the fact that there is higher levels than I'm at right now. And the thing that I always like to say is that there's no level cap. And once that clicked in my head of like, if this is a video game, you can get like level 100, level whatever. With everything, the principles in the program, there is no level cap. So once that clicked in my head, I was like, why would I ever sit there and go, I'm good, I'm happy at this place? Because it's like, no, if there's no level cap, like I want to play this video game forever. I want to keep going. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Interesting point you brought up too about like also looking at people's outcomes, right? What people were getting to. Because I think the hard part with our program sometimes is you do need to feel and experientially, emotionally understand that there is a level 50 before you are not satisfied with your level 5. And what I mean by this is, I always use an example of like the 2022 runner versus the 1930s runner. So for those of you who don't know this analogy, right? In 1930s, it was impossible for a human being to run under 10 seconds for the 100-meter dash. Impossible. Nobody did it. Even the best runners, Olympic runners, didn't do it. But in 2022, it's an expectation that you run sub 10. It's an average. Now, our bodies didn't really change. Anatomy didn't really change from 30s to 2022. What changed was our mindset. was us lifting our own glass ceiling, asking different kinds of questions to get to the higher level. Now, if you ask the 1930s people, dude, you could run sub 10 today. Or not today, but like you can train to run sub 10 within a couple of years, maybe. We have done it. Why don't you? Their answer would always be that it's good enough. What they have is good enough. They think what they have is good enough. Right? So it's almost like you back then, right? You were level 5, and you could only see that, like, based on your surroundings, your friends' relationships, your parents' relationships. No, this is what relationships is. This is how good it can be, and that's it. And I have to settle with what I don't like. Level 5 is the highest level. And so once you realize that level 5 is the highest level, you stop there and you go like, okay. Right? But then once you realize it's a level 50, and until you see that and you witness that, then you go, oh my God, let me go there. Because at the end of the day, subconsciously, we realize we only have one life to live. Do I want to live my life at level 5? Or do I want to live my life at level 50? And once you know that's a level 50, you cannot live your one and only life settling with your level 5 anymore. You cannot.
It's like, the other day when we were talking about stores, like market stores, right? And if everything in the world, every store, shop, whatever, was a little building that held 10 people maximum and made whatever 10K a week, if that was the world, then starting up a business, you'd be like, okay, I get my 10K a week, holds 10 people store, I'll be happy with that. But then Amazon comes along, or whatever, Walmart or something, and then you're like, oh, I can do better than this. But until you see that Amazon, Walmart, whatever, you're happy and you're satisfied with your market store making your 10K, whatever it is, a week, and you're happy with that. But then once you get the mud clay taken from your eyes, and you're like, oh, there's so many more levels up here.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you want to settle for that store? Like, you'd suddenly be like, wow, I can do so much more, and I didn't even realize. That's kind of how it feels, where you're like, yeah, you can settle and be like, okay, I'm above average or around average, but why would you? Like, when there's no cap, why would you not want to shoot for the moon, right?
Yeah, and I love that too. And I think too, that mindset that you mentioned about, so like, first we tell people, don't forget about your level 5, that's a level 50, right? But what you're saying, I think, is one step beyond that, which is like, forget about fucking level 50. Doesn't even stop there. There's a level infinity. It never stops, right? And that mindset of never really stopping, never really getting to the finish line, is what forces your mind and your body to continually iterate your process, right? For example, okay, if you look at, let's say, 20, 30 years ago, even like 10 years ago, the way you solve your relationship was you went to therapy. That's the way you do it. That's the only way you did it, right? But therapy, if you think about it, like, because I tried to do therapy, or I tried to do coaching. And the reason why I decided to do coaching is because of this one reason. And one mentor told me this, and this paradigm changed my life forever. He said this: well, let's look at a therapist business model. Okay. They are working with people one-on-one. They exchange their money for hours, basically. So the funny thing about a therapist's job is the value they can create is always going to be limited. The more clients the therapist has, the more inundated they become, the less effective they become. So it's a funny thing. The less clients you have, the more effective you are. But if you have low clients, that means that you are a shitty therapist. I'm sorry. Right. But if you're a really good therapist, the more clients you have, the less effective you become. You're just too spread thin. So bad therapists gets encouraged. Good therapist gets discouraged. That's a broken system. Let's look at this model, right? The way we coach. We enroll 1,500 people per year. No therapist can even do that, right? And it's a high ticket program. And once they come in, they have a lifetime access. So the more clients we get, the bigger the community becomes. The more people can coach each other. So the more clients we get, the more effective we become. Think about that. Now that's one small paradigm shift that changes the whole game completely. All right. So now we're at the point where like some people tell us, for example, oh, Jeff, all you care about is money. All you care about is whatever. All you care about is like enrolling people. It's like, well, yes, because me enrolling more people makes my program more successful. It increases the value that I can bring. It increases the people I can help. How is that wrong? Right? That makes no sense. But for someone to think about that idea from this therapy model to where we are today, someone needed to think outside the box beyond their current level. They need to think about what could be. And the only mindset that can work for that is if you have the infinite mindset, no finish line mindset. Because once you put on a finish line for yourself, this is the target I want to hit. That's it. Whatever ideas you think of, you will only force your brain to go to that level.
Yeah. Yeah, because you'll see life as a percentage and you're like, oh, I'm at 70%. Okay, there's only 30% left. So I'll, but yeah, it's really limiting. And it's actually one of the things that I can't remember the exact call it was. But you said to someone they were talking about something else. It wasn't even relationships. And you were like, why the fuck would you limit your mindset? Why would you limit your beliefs on what is possible just based on your immediate surroundings? And it's always stuck with me because there's so many ways that we limit our beliefs in everything that we do on what's possible based on our own experience and the way that we've, were born and raised and lived our lives, and based on the people around us and the attitudes around us. Because there's so many people around us that will be like, oh, with this program, there will be people that are like, oh, like, why don't bother fixing your relationship, just move on. Like, this person's the problem, they can't be changed. And there's so many people around that will try to limit what you believe in or reduce it down. Whereas breaking out of that and just going, okay, great opinion, like, love the fact that you have that. I think differently, and I'm actually going to aim here. It's like when you play darts, you don't aim for the bullseye. You aim for above the bullseye. Mm-hmm. Because if you aim for the bullseye, you're always going to go lower. And it's like, if you see life as at level 100, you're going to go, okay, I'm going to aim for a level 100 and I'm going to get to 70. And I'll always get to 70. Whereas if you're like, there's no level cap here, I'm going to aim up here, then do you know what? You'll find out there's a level 110, there's a level 120, because you're always aiming higher than where you think the limit is.
Exactly. It's like, this is the difference between like operating at a frontier versus operating just behind the leader, right?
Right.
Like, this is why there's so few people in this world who are always at the frontier or something. Because to be at the frontier or something, it takes a whole different mindset of growth. Like, even if you're one step behind the frontier, you're going to think about that mindset. You're always going to be thinking about the guy setting the frontier is always going to be defining what the frontier is, right? But you cannot really go overtake the frontier guy. Like, it's just impossible. And so a great analogy again is like, there's different kinds of like superstars. So for example, if you look at 1930s runners again, right, there are superstars who's running close to sub 10, the best runner of that time. But even the best runner of that time may not be in the frontier. It takes someone to go, I don't care what level I am at right now, there's always going to be something. There's always going to be something. There's always going to be something that next level, right? And that person inching the frontier forward is the one thinking outside the box, way outside the box, thinking beyond the current ceiling, have no ceiling. And that's a very difficult mindset to have, right? Because we want that ceiling, we want some sort of destination, we want a finish line. But once we place that finish line, we immediately box ourselves in. And so it's such a shame when people like email me or talk to me and say like, based on what I know, I don't think my situation is possible. I don't think my relationship is savable. I think my relationship is a lost cause. I'm like, well, yeah, that's based on what you know, though, on your self-imposed ceiling. But once you box yourself in like that, I could tell you all day long, here's what you need to do to get to the next level. You will never listen to me.
Right.
Because you already boxed, you already limited yourself. And that's what you're saying, I think, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's that self-imposed limit. And without when I joined the program, I had that so much. But it just blew everything away. It destroyed all of that. And continually, even now, like, working with you and stuff, there's things that I've been like, hey, Jeff, like, I don't know if this is possible. And you catch me being like, really, Chris? And I'm like, fuck. And then level up and get to the next level. And it's like, yeah, of course, it's just figuring it out. Like, once you get rid of that mindset that there's any finish line, anything becomes possible, and you're able to then force your mind to go, let's figure out how to do this, because it is possible.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because like that's how the program was built, right? So think about the principles of, let's say, safety that we have, right? That's bred from, not to like toot my own horn, but from me thinking for many years going, okay, here's the current way people are doing things in relationships. We have boundaries, we have the 4 horsemen, we have Gottman stuff, we have smart contact. That cannot be the frontier of what people can do in a relationship. So me thinking that and looking at my own relationship going and forcing my brain to get there forced me to come up with safety. That's the new next step principle to guide ourselves in there. We talk about also like the sexual passion part, right? People have accepted now that whenever you get married, passion is just going to go down. But no, like I refuse to accept that. I want to find a mechanism, a paradigm shift, a way of living, a process that allows us to actually increase that over time. I want to see that, right? And we did it, right? We are now coaching people on systems and principles that actually gets better over time, that actually brings them to that next level. And I think I was talking to Jason Ray, and he kind of said the same thing, right? This is a revolution, this program. This is not just an iteration of something that exists. This is a revolution. And when you come to the program as a revolution, you cannot take your past knowledge and dirty this revolution. You cannot do that. And it's also like, if you look at the business too, we are at 45,000 subscribers. You know how much money we pull in. Mm-hmm. We know how much scale we have. That's unheard of in the industry. No one pulls that number with the number of subscribers we have. No one. And it's also that result is bred by us always thinking like, what's next? Never a finish line, right? Never letting our own limiting beliefs like limit us. So for people who are right now, right, they're looking at this and they're thinking like, oh, it might work for those people, but it wouldn't work for me. My situation is a bit different. And all these doubts are coming from your own limiting beliefs. Dude, what a shame. Why don't you experience this and see for yourself just how high you can be? But remember, like, you only have one life, right? If you only have one life, if you were right that your ceiling is your ceiling, then when someone's telling you that's a higher ceiling, dude, what do you have to lose? You got one life. Do you want to settle for living your life at level 5 forever? Or do you actually want to go up there?
The one thing that I would say to those people is, if what you believed was true, how the fuck do you explain all of the other stuff that is happening that is disproving that. Even if there's one example that you see as a miracle, this one-off example of like, oh my God, like this seemed like an impossible. Even if there's one example that disproves that, that means what you think right now is not correct, because there's at least one example out there that disproves that. And if there's one example, that means that it's possible, and that means what you think is the top limit right now, your special situation, it means that it's bullshit. And that's the thing that, you know, kicks everything out of the water. And the reason why I was laughing before was because I remember starting the program and still, even though it was drummed into my head like there's no situation that's unique, there was still at the back of my mind just like, yeah, but. And now, especially as a coach, and I see those people coming in being like, hey, here's my situation and here's this wrinkle that I've not found yet. So like, is this applicable? And it makes me laugh, not in a horrible way, but I'm like, yeah, I remember thinking that. I remember thinking that exactly the same thing. And it's so funny to be now in the coach position and be like, dude, like, I could give you a million scenarios that would blow your mind, that would just be like, this is physically impossible. But it's not. Like, there really is no situation is unique. And it's sad to think that despite all the evidence that's out there, despite all the hundreds of results, and lives change through the program, it is a little disheartening to think that people are still like, oh, but my situation's special. Oh, or my, there's an affair going on, or, we're across the planet from each other, or we haven't spoken in 6 months. Like, all of this stuff is like, okay, like, we've seen that situation happen, and we've seen the outcome and reconciliation and lives changed. We've seen it. Like, just trust the fact that this is not some special, unique snowflake situation, despite how much you want it to be.
Yeah. It's also like sometimes like people want to see what they want to see, right?
Right.
It's, some people, they don't actually want to do the work. They don't. They're intimidated by it, right? And we're going to talk about this too, like playing victim, right? A lot of people like to do that, because if they admit to themselves that, yes, the problem is me and I can fix it, well, now it becomes their responsibility to do it. Now it adds the work on them. But if they can keep lying to themselves and saying, it's not my fault, or they say, it's not possible, then it absolves them of any work.
Right.
It's almost like this, right? It's almost like there was one example where, and this is a silly example, but it works, okay? So we have this new fireplace in the living room. It's a nice fireplace, right? And when we first moved in, it was broken. And so if someone told me, no, it's fixable, that fireplace is fixable, then I would have to now take it upon myself to go, okay, fine, I got to call the guy. I got to tell him I got to pay for the fix, everything like that. What an ordeal. But if I can somehow convince myself without even checking, no, that fireplace is not fixable, and I can tell other people, no, it's not fixable, it's great. Now I don't have to do anything, and I don't even get blamed for not doing anything. I can now have the excuse and tell people like, oh, how come you didn't fix the fireplace? Oh, because I couldn't. Oh, it makes sense. No one's going to bat an eye, right? So same thing here. If you are managed to convince yourself, if you manage to convince your partner that your relationship is not fixable, then when you don't fix it, you have an easy out. You have an easy excuse, and no one will blame you for it because it's not fixable. But when we come along and tell people, no, it's fixable, dude, people don't want to believe that, because once they admit it's fixable, they can no longer use the excuse anymore, because now they have to explain, why did you not fix it when it was fixable?
Right.
What excuse do you have?
Why did you walk away from that when it was, why did you throw out a perfectly fine relationship that needed some tweaks or whatever? Like, why did you throw that out? Why did you throw away 20 years of marriage? Why did you do that? Like, why did you do that? That's on you now, all of a sudden. But when the problem that happens a lot is that, friends and family and stuff, they surround you with like, oh, hey, like your partner's the problem. Don't worry about it. Like, you're good. Like, you tried. So just move on. But the reality is that, like, yeah, of course you tried. But you didn't make the right fixes. You didn't do the right things. You tried in ways that were easy, where you do the things where you're like, oh, well, I bought flowers. Like, well, what does she want? God, like, did she not appreciate me? But like, you get surrounded by people who help absolve you of your responsibility and pat you on the back and go, don't worry about it, move on. And then you move on and you never learn how to fix the fireplace, right?
Yeah.
And it becomes another thing where you're like, oh, well, that relationship breaks down because you don't actually learn the skills to navigate a relationship and to change the things that you need to change in yourself. So you're always palming it off. And again, your fireplace breaks. So you chuck it out and you buy a new one. Your fireplace breaks and you're just buying new fireplaces all the time. That's your life.
Right? And it's a cycle for a lot of people, right? They always like look for new relationships, thinking that the next one will be different. And when the next one is not different, they always blame it on their partner. They say like, well, she wasn't right. I thought she was right, but she wasn't right.
That's what I did for all of my previous relationships. That's exactly what I did. Always. It was always their fault. And it was like, oh, well, that wasn't the right relationship. That was their fault. They did this. Move on to the next one. That one, you get the like honeymoon period, and then it goes down to that plateau, that level, and then it's like, okay, yeah, well, this is breaking down. This is this is their fault. They were, it's always somebody else's fault. But that's not the reality of it. It's not the way that it works. Despite how much I wanted to convince myself that it was
right.
Always somebody else's fault.
And it's funny, like, let's spend a minute on like the victim mindset, right? Because it's so insidious. And I want to kind of define for people what the victim mindset is, right? A lot of people think about victim mindset as like fault or no fault. This is my fault, that's your fault. And whoever's fault it is, the other person is the victim. That's not what victim is, right? Victim is about responsibility, right? So whenever you try to if you look at the word responsibility, it's responsibility, your ability to respond. And when you play victim, you're trying to absolve basically your ability to respond. So for example, you can apply this to like a relationship setting, for example, like, okay, so yes, right? Your partner came home angry. Okay. It's her fault that now people in the house feel uncomfortable. It's her fault. But who gives a shit? Right then and there, you have an ability to respond. You can either respond positively and break that cycle or respond negatively. What do you choose? And most people who play victim will either choose to follow the script that's been given to them. Your partner's angry, so I be angry then. And then when a fight breaks out, you blame them and say like, that's your fault. You started this, right? Or they make no decision. You say like, oh, she's always like that. But when you make no decision, you are choosing to also play out the same script, right? What we talk about is responsibility. It's choosing, knowing that at every single moment in your life, you have an ability to respond. How do you respond? Another example is like the man in the elevator one. You walk into an elevator, there's a dying man there. Is it your fault that the man is dying? No. But can you respond to that? Can you help that guy? Yes. How do you choose to respond? So I want people to like let it sink in for a bit. The other thing I want to clarify about the victim mindset is that it's not weak. Sometimes playing victim feels strong. For example, when your partner comes home sad and angry, and you start to berate her and say, it's your fucking fault. Stop being so angry. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do that. You're playing victim there. You're basically saying, the problem is because of you, and I can do nothing about it. It feels powerful. Playing victim at that moment feels powerful because you're shifting the blame on other people. You're basically pushing people down to prop yourself up.
Yeah.
You're absolving yourself of whatever mistakes you made. It feels powerful. Right? So playing victim can feel powerful. Number 3, playing victim always makes you weaker. Because the moment you say, right, my relationship problems is because of my partner, because of my mom, because of my childhood, because of the government, because this program is too expensive. I don't give a crap what your excuse is. Once you blame your problems to something outside of yourself, you're basically saying, I'm no longer in the driver's seat. That other things in life can affect my life, my future, and I can do nothing to fix it. You're the weakest position on earth. So ironically, the moment you feel most powerful, when you blame, that's the moment you absolve all your power. Now, you did that a lot in the beginning. Tell me how you manifested your victim mindset. Tell me what were the things you did, you thought when you played victim?
Everything. Like throughout I was a victim to other people. I was a victim to jobs, bosses, situations, like everything. And it manifested in everything that I did. And again, it was like I was almost proud to be a victim. Like, I'm still alive, despite that the entire world is shitting on me. Is kind of how I kind of wore it as a badge of pride. I'm still alive, despite how everyone hates me and all this sort of stuff. And it got worse. It got worse and worse and worse. And it's such an insidious mindset because you do feel strong to be like, yeah, like this is their fault, and I'm recognizing this, and I'm in a powerful position because I can recognize who's a bully in this world and who is shitting on me and who's doing all this bad stuff. And you feel like you're this like really smart observer of the world, and the world is full of bullies and people who hate you, who want the worst for you, and it makes you feel super special and like the center of, it's like the Truman Show. Like you're a victim of every other person in the world, right? That's kind of how it feels. And like Truman, you're going to break free one day and the whole facade will be exposed. That's how I felt.
It's funny you say that. It's a great example because I want to talk about this notion of the blind victim a bit, right? And that's the hardest thing. I think you as a coach, this, is people often play victim, but they're not only unaware they're playing victim, but they're in denial of it often. Yeah. They're so blind to the fact that they're playing victim. An example of this is, we're not going to name examples of the clients, right? But like for example, right? You were playing victim, right? But then you were telling yourself this whole time that, no, playing victim is right. It's a heroic thing to do.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, you got to be freaking blind to see that, right? But in the moment back then, you could never see it. You can never see past your blindness. You're stuck there. And so there's a couple of reasons why people are stuck there, right? So the first one, and I wanted you to fill in on what you think is the other two, right? The first one is that reward punishment paradox thing. We always talk about this, how if you look at any good habits you can think of, eating a salad, exercising, think about it, right? When you exercise, you get punished now, but you get rewarded much later. The pain of physical exertion is now, but you may not lose weight or gain muscle till weeks or months or even years later. So immediate punishment, delayed rewards for good habits. Bad habits is the other way around. You smoke a cigarette, you get rewarded now. But you may not get lung cancer and punishment till 10 years, 20, 30, 40 years later. Every single good habit is like that. Every single bad habit is like that. Now let's look at victim mindset. When you play victim and you absolve the work from yourself and you blame other people, you feel good now. But it might not bite you in the ass till much later when your relationship is broken down. So by that definition, transitive property, right? Do you think the victim mindset is good or bad? Obviously a bad habit, because it matches the markings of all bad habits. So that's actually a good question to ask yourself, right? Always is, am I falling for the victim mindset? Is whatever thought that I have, whatever emotion that I have, does it make me feel good now, but punishes me later? Or the other way around? Punishes me now because I have to accept something within myself and rewards me later. Which one is it? So because it's a paradox, our human brain, if left to its own devices, will always lean towards bad habits, which is why bad habits seems to crop up very easily, but it's so hard to maintain and get good habits. It's so hard. That's one reason, right? People are just not conscious enough to understand when they're falling for victim mindset or not, and they fall into the bad habits because they want the immediate reward. But you mentioned something else interesting too, which was there's almost this like snowflake culture that we have now, where we glorify people who play victim. Tell me more about that. Like, tell me more about,
because
your thoughts
it's
there,
kind of like the martyr sort of syndrome, right? Where you're like this image of this, I don't know, person filled with arrows from all sorts and still standing, being like, look at me, despite all of this, I'm sort of, I'm the hero right now. And it's like, well, actually, no, you're taking pride in how much ammo you're taking in, but you're not actually doing anything. You're not doing anything. You're just standing there talking about all of this shit that's happening to you. And it's just happening to you, but you're not actively participating in life. You're wearing it as a badge of honor that stuff happened to you. Like, stuff happens to everyone in every way. But, if you want to be a hero of your own story, then, you need to participate. You need to do stuff. You need to actually actively, it's easy to complain, right? It's easy to sit there and say, the world is doing this to me. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not, who knows? But at the end of the day, if you've already created your outcome, that this is how I'm going to die, is being this victim, like if you've already written that outcome, like what a sad existence. It's sad to sit there and think that's how you define yourself, as the pincushion in everyone else's story. Fuck that. Like, fuck that. Like you said, having responsibility and going like, how can I navigate the situation? How can I turn this into something great? How can I do my part and rise above? If people have you think people have bad intentions or good intentions, how can I rise above that? Where it doesn't matter about intentions. I'm actually so, that stuff is petty to me now. Figuring out like, are they a bad guy? Are they a good guy?
Yeah. But what's interesting, right? As you say that, I think about the way society programs us. Now you got to ask, right? Like, why are people like that? Why are people glorifying? So the thing you're mentioning is like, people are barely surviving. They're not thriving in life. They don't know how to thrive. They're barely surviving, but they're happy with that. They actually glorify surviving. Why do people do that? Why did you do that? Why are so many people doing that? Because let's look at society's script, right? Society's programming here. Right now we're in a position where we're making 3 million a year. Our relationship is the best it's ever been, right? Our lifestyle is very nice. We're happy. We got nothing to complain about. We never complain about anything, right? Now, what if I went to my group of friends or group of normal people, and I start talking about how much money I make, the things I'm buying, right? I start talking about how happy we are. how amazing things are in our relationship, right? We talk about just how there's something to complain about. And if people are complaining to us, we walk away and we say, I don't want to hear your complaining. What would people think if I did that? They think I'm some arrogant, fucking full of yourself, fucking annoying prick. Even when I talk about my program here, how awesome my program is, right? How much money we make in the course, etc. How we're going to take you to the next level, etc. How great this is. What are people going to think? People are going to judge and think, how proud of you. You're just trying to sell. People get really weirded out by that, right? But when was the last time you went to a group of friends and your friends started complaining about everything in life, about how they're failing in life, about how bad things are, about how bad people are, about this that happened, this negative thing that happened? Do you feel compelled to actually go, oh yeah, that's tough. Ooh, and you play into that script. So if people are winning and they talk about how they're winning, people go, oh, stop that. You're full of yourself. But if people are losing and they're being a martyr and they talk about that, it's an obligation for you to go, oh, let's talk about that.
Right.
So with that script, with that programming, no wonder people are always leading towards being a victim because it feels good. You get some validation. It feels shitty sometimes to be where I am. I have all this success. I have all this happiness. We cannot share it sometimes. Nobody wants to hear it because everyone's stuck in their own problems. You know, It's interesting, right?
Right. Yeah, I think it's one of those things where I think the mind kind of wants to split the world into good guys and bad guys. And, you know, when you don't have much money, then rich people are the bad guys, right? They always will be. No, you could be the best, the best philanthropic whatever, but you'll still be a bad guy because you're rich, right? And the mind just wants to go, okay, good or bad. But often it comes down to like, am I getting anything from this person? If I get something from them, they're a good guy. And you kind of justify, even if they could be very morally whatever, you kind of justify it because like, oh, well, they helped me out in this situation. So they're not all bad, right? And we draw that line for ourselves and we create our own little like, this is acceptable because it benefits me. This is not acceptable because it doesn't benefit me, so I don't like it. And they're bad guys. So we simplify and polarize that, you know, good and bad sort of thing. But that's not the way that the world is. As much as it would be fucking easy if the world was, everyone was just like, you know, green shirts for good people, red shirts for bad people, be so simple, right? And that's what our mind pushes towards, but it's not. You know, and it makes me think about like things that you've said before where you're talking about charity, right? Like you can give, you could earn all this money, all the 3 million a year that you make and give it all to charity. And that would be a good thing. But at the end of the day, it would leave you with no resources to develop the program and to build all of that sort of stuff. So eventually the program is going to go to shit and you're going to be left with nothing. And then you're not going to give any money to charity, right?
Yeah. And not only that, people are going to think, oh, you're just doing that for PR.
Right. Yeah. Right. You'll be the bad guy because you're rich and you're exactly. So it's it's easy. It's easy to play the victim. No matter where you are in life, there's always going to be another. There's always going to be you know, some threat to you or whatever, and you're going to be a victim of it. And it happens to everyone, and it's the easiest thing to fall into. But as soon as you start to remove that, life becomes easier to navigate because you're not sat there being like, good guy or bad guy, good girl or bad girl. Well, like, what is this? Like, who is this person? You're not trying to figure them out. Right. You're just sat there going, they are who they are. And everything is pros and cons, right?
But it's also hard to tell who the good guys are and the bad guys are because it brings back this notion of like the imbalance of punishment and reward, right? Where like, so let's say you start complaining about your life. You start complaining about your partner, right? And people start to like gravitate towards you because they're like pitying you. They're like, oh my God, come talk to me anytime you want, please. You know, whatever. You get their immediate reward on that one. But the punishment from thinking like that, from being the woe is me victim mindset, may not punish you too much later. Right. You might not realize it too much later, even. Right?
Yeah.
So that right there, your psyche is telling you, this guy playing into my woe is me attitude, my victim mindset, is a good guy because he's rewarding me right now.
Yeah.
So it becomes blurred on like, who's the actual good guy here? And sometimes we, as coaches, you know this, we give people tough love. We tell people what they want to hear, what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. We punish them now so that they can get something better for the future. Are we the good guys or the bad guys? It's hard to tell sometimes. But if you are interpreting everything from the victim mindset, then you're always going to be catching the wrong good guys.
Right.
You're going to be attracted to the wrong good guys. But once you switch that, you're going to be attracted to the right good guys. But victims will always feel like the good guys they pick are the good guys. They're going to be convinced they're the good guys.
Because they make them feel good in that instance.
Exactly. It's a wrong criteria here.
Yeah. And that is the thing, especially as a coach. Yeah, jumping in and being like, of course, like you want to make people feel good. Of course you want to make people feel good. It's a nice human thing, right? To be like, yeah, I want to make you feel good in this instance. But at the end of the day, if long term that, imagine an alcoholic, right? And this person in front of you is an alcoholic, and they're like, I want to fucking drink. Come and have a drink with me. Come and have a drink. And it's like, of course I want to have a drink with you. Like, I can handle my alcohol. I don't have alcoholism. And of course I want to have a drink with you. I want to make you feel good in this fucking moment. But if I have a drink with you right now, man, like it's setting up the rest of your day, week, life on the wrong fucking path. So I'm going to have to be an asshole right now and say no. And you're going to hate me for it because I'm not supporting you. I'm not treating you like a human being. And it's like, look, like, and not that people in the program are alcoholics, but it's easy to fall into that victim mindset and carry that with you. And it's like, I can't sit there and indulge that victim mindset because it may feel really good right now for you, but down the line, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. So I have to be the bad guy right now. And to be the bad guy to thousands of people, it's tough because you have to do it. But that's like, this is the help. And that's what you did with me. There's been so many times, in coaching me where it's been like, yeah, Chris, like, I'm going to be the fucking bad guy here. Like, and it's going to help you. And it does help. But in that moment, it doesn't feel like help.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like help at the moment. And I think that brings me to like this dichotomy we always struggle with is like, the opioid crisis. If you look at the opioid crisis, right, the reason why it started was because part of it is because like hospitals in the US are privatized. And so when they're privatized, they have competition. When they have competition, they have to have some criteria by which to differentiate which hospital is better. Well, who's the one rating this? The patients. Well, what are the patients rating? How pain-free their trip was. So hospitals are now incentivized to give people what they want, not what they need, what they want, which is, let me overdose you with painkillers. So you'll give me a good rating. That's what you want. But because of that, people get addicted to opioids.
Right.
Massive crisis. So same thing for coaching. What people want is to be heard, is to feel safe in that sense, right? To make someone feel understood. For me to tell them what they want to hear, all the nice things, they're doing a great job, whatever it is. But it's not what they need. I mean, everyone who's watching this, who is in the program, you've been living a failing life. You're a failing performer. That's why you're here. Do you want me to give you what you have been wanting this whole time, which has gotten you to where you are? Or do you want me to give you what you need? But it's hard for a coach to do that because I risk bad reviews, I risk angry clients, or because it's tough to tell people what they need to hear. So if you're listening to this, guys, like when you find a coach that tells you what you need to hear, makes you uncomfortable, pushes you outside your boundaries, demands the best out of you and nothing less, don't resist that. Run in. Lean in, because that's what you need. That's the hospital you can go to where you can get cured and not get some fucking opioid addiction. Okay? That's what you want. That's what you should want. And I think that's the value of the community too, right? Being in the community of people who don't play victim, who sees the tough love in a proper way, who sees the uncomfortable journey of growth in a proper way. Like, you go outside into the world, like, do you notice this? Like, whenever I go out into the world, away from my own community that I've built, it is so negative. Like, everyone just plays a negative script. They like to get you down there. But once you go into the community, people act differently. People are like very, very, the A players are operating at the next level kind of thing. No victim mindset. And you just get inspired that way. Right?
Yeah. And like you said, the high level guys are, you know, I mean, we use terms like A players and, you know, levels, whatever it is, but truly, like, the people who just get the most success from the program and therefore life in general, because it's not just about relationships, it really does change your life. And all of the success, the really truly successful members in the program, they're always the ones that when they get negative feedback, they're just like, hey, like, tell me about this, tell me more, like, what am I missing? And it's like, you know, people think that, like, being this, like, high value man or A player, whatever it is about being like, oh, I fucking know my shit, whatever. It's actually the opposite. It's actually the opposite. These guys are so humble, and no matter how much success or outcomes or whatever in life in the program, they're still sat there being like, what am I missing? Am I missing something? And it could be like a newbie. It could be like whatever it is. They will sit there and they'll be like, they won't sit there and be like, oh, hey, do you not know how long I've been on this program? I've been on this for 9 months. I've been on this for a year. They don't do that. They're like, okay, interesting. Cool. Like, thanks for the feedback. That's awesome. I'm going to take that on board. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to process it. And that's the difference between being a victim and being a player, whatever you want to call it. Like, is actually being able to sit down and just fucking listen and understand and not play victim and playing to your own ego. Because that's the thing that the problem that I've always had is such an ego. I always had to be right. Even when I knew I didn't know about a subject, I would still jump in and be like, oh, well, yeah, here's what you need to know about this. You know, and it's just so stupid because I was just like pretending. And life is so much easier now to not have to pretend to know everything. Like,
you know, it's so funny you say that. Like, I love that analogy, that contrast, because, like, even in the business world, you see this, right? So the premise here is, like, when people try to talk to me about how awesome they are, how much money they make and everything like that. Now, I know I said how much money I made here, but, like, I think we have the problem in our program, and you see this, right? People don't understand the value that we can actually create. People don't get it. Like, until you join it, you don't understand just how high we can take you. Mm. So we have this problem where I think we don't talk about us enough. We don't talk about the value enough, I don't think. Because when people start to talk about their value too much, like, you see this LinkedIn profile sometimes, right? I'm a crypto investor. I'm a content creator. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a real estate investor. I'm a real estate broker. I mean, like, they do so many things. Their LinkedIn profile is just like one big, like, self jerk off. Like,
right.
Right? It's so much. Those people, they're usually at level 1 of success. They're failure success there, because they might get some success, but they're still insecure about it to the point where they need to talk about it all the time.
Right.
Because they cannot source their success from their actual success. They have to talk about it. They have to make the world know. But people who are actually getting success, they got nothing to prove anymore. They're just like, whatever. Right? You want to believe it? Fine. You don't want to believe it? That's fine. But I get my satisfaction from my own success that I get from myself. And so these people, like you said, whenever you give them, like, negative feedback, etc., they don't go, like, defensive and go like, no, let me tell you what I've done. Only the people who haven't actually gotten success does that.
Yeah.
Right.
It's all advertising. It's all marketing. It's all in your face. Like, please believe this. Believe this.
Yeah. And so this goes back into like reconciling process too, right? Like a lot of people ask me, Jeff, can you give me some things to say and do that can convince my partner of my changes? Like we got this application the other day. Jeff, I've changed. I just need to show her that I've changed. I'm like, that's not how that works. Because if you really have changed, if you really are up here, it should be your wife coming back to you, not you pulling her in. You don't need to pull that in. Your results will speak for itself. Your micro actions will speak for itself. You don't need to say that. There's no script. And if you look at any of the reconciliation stories that we have, including your relationship right now, right? There's not a point when we actually had the relationship talk. Where are we? Here's my changes. Here's how awesome I am. Never do we say that. Everything is always implied. It's a subtext of everything that you do. And once your partner sees that, feels that, she draws in. So if you're trying to still do that, then you kind of miss the point of this whole thing.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to point out your value, right? Like, and like you said, if you're trying to do that all the time, it shows that you don't really trust your own value. It shows that you're so scared that it's so small that other people are going to miss it. So you have to talk about it. And, again, that's the way that I lived my life, was I was like, had to point out all of these things that I thought were of value, just to remind and just be like, hey, don't forget that I do this, and don't forget that I do this. And it's like, because I was so insecure about what I brought to the table that I had to sell myself constantly. And it shows how insecure you are when you're constantly having to talk about how great you are. It means that you haven't
really grown, ironically.
No.
It's the paradox of logic, as we say. The more you talk about logically how you've changed, the less you actually show that you've changed, kind of thing. I know this thing long, but like I want to make one last point, right? Can you believe we've been doing this for 2 hours, man?
I know. It's actually pretty insane. I feel like we haven't even touched on
the big stuff. I know. I always feel that during these interviews of like, man, I wish we could have talked about so many things, but at the same time, it's deep. One last thing that I've been thinking about, and this, is about the striving outcomes versus falling outcomes, right? And we talk about this notion of like, in life, there's two kinds of outcomes that you can get. There's striving outcomes. Striving outcomes usually are like running, right? That's where the more you strive, the more energy, direct energy you place into that activity, the better you get. So running faster, lifting more weights, the more direct energy, the more you try, you willpower, right? The more you can do it. But there are some things in life that's falling, like sleeping, right? The more you try to sleep, the more direct energy you put into sleeping, the less you can sleep. Now, there's a reason why they call it falling in love or falling asleep, right? So if you want your partner to fall in love with you, you have to realize that the more you try to get her to fall in love, the more you try to pull her in, the less she can do that. The same way, the more you try to sleep, the less you can sleep. Which is why, like, if you have this mindset of wanting tactics, what can I say? What can I do? And you're trying to pull and rope your partner back in like that, you will never reconcile. And I'll tell people this: if you have that mindset, you will never reconcile. Because your partner cannot fall into love when you are pulling that in. When you're striving to get her back in, right? So what do you do then? Right? Well, let's look at falling asleep. How do you fall asleep? You fall asleep when you let go of all your thoughts about falling asleep. When you let go of your need to fall asleep, your goal of falling asleep. And we just focus on the process of falling asleep, but not at the outcome of falling asleep. Right. Which is why, when you fall asleep, have you ever remembered the exact moment when you fell asleep?
Right.
Never. Because you fall asleep when you let go of trying to fall asleep. That's the funny thing about our psyche. Same thing for falling in love. Do you remember the exact moment when you fell in love? No. Because you fall in love when you let go of trying to fall in love.
Right.
Yeah. You surrender to it. And so how do we make people surrender? You focus on the process. You focus on the process of of like there's 4 ingredients of surrender. We always talk about like the drowning in evidence, absence of anti-evidence. We have empowerment, the freedom to explore, and also time. We say that in the program. You give people those 4 ingredients via safety, via your internal shifts, everything like that. You're going to get your partner to fall in love, which is why we say you never need to have the conversation about falling in love, about getting back together. They will do that by themselves. If you think you still need to do that, then you're missing the point.
Yeah, and it's gonna push you further away. The more you're trying to, concentrate on the outcome, you kind of you start to choke it out, right? Because you're grasping onto it, being like, "Hey, this should be happening. This should be happening. Why is it not happening?" And it just makes it worse. It pushes it further away.
Yeah. So this is a massive paradigm shift that I think differentiates us from so many other programs, in that a lot of other programs, I think, still try the striving approach. Let me strive to save this relationship. No, we need to have the falling approach, which is like, let's grow yourself, become the brightest beacon, and just let her come back in herself. That's fine. And that's a more powerful way to do it.
And it's a truer way of doing it, because, you know, when you think about some of the other programs that are concentrated on like reconciliation and like making sure that you stay together, it puts all that pressure on like the idea of staying together and being together rather than actually the natural process. It's almost like an arranged marriage, right? It's kind of like, hey, this is all about being together rather than the natural like falling in love, wanting to be together. It puts all the pressure on the outcome rather than, and then it makes it just be like, oh, I don't know whether I want this outcome right now, but I feel pressure for it to happen. Whereas, like you said, if you're concentrating on the natural, you know, self-development and being better communication, internal shifts and all that sort of stuff, it will naturally happen, because you're not sat there being like, well, are we going to stay together or not? Are we going to get married or not? Are we going to be a partner or not?
Right. I think it's an important part to understand. I think that's why in our program, like we talk about untethering a lot. That's why. Right? Untethering is the moment when you're no longer doing because you want to have, but because you are.
Yep.
You let go of the having. When you can do something and get addicted to the process of doing something without having any expectation of an outcome. And getting there is crucial for you to surrender to a lot of things in life, for you to not only fall back in love with your partner, to fall in love with the program itself, what you're learning, to allow your partner to fall in love. Because whenever you're talking about emotions are always falling, which is why reverse psychology exists. Right? Because the more you try to force an emotion, the worse it gets. The further away you become from it. Right? So we have to always understand and master this falling sensation. And the only falling sensation can only happen when you fully untether, when you let go of that outcome completely. Right? So I'll end with that. On that bombshell, as they say. Chris, thank you so much for dedicating so much time. Guys, I know we only even though it's a 2-hour interview, we only scratch the surface of everything, like legit. So if you want to learn deeper here and letting you go from wherever you are to level infinite, you can check out the masterclass I have down below for you. The masterclass is about 1.5 hours long. At the end of the masterclass, if you want to apply for the program, you can do that at the end of the masterclass. But just note that right now we only have room for less than 7% of clients, of applicants. And it pains us to turn down so many people, but be sure, just like when you're applying for a prestigious job, interview, whatever it is, make sure you fill out the application process properly. That's all we can ask.
Yeah.
But I hope to see more of you in the program soon. Chris, again, thank you so much for joining us. We'll probably have a part 2 sometime in the future where
I imagine so.
talk deeper stuff. Any last minute advice let's start with last minute advice for our clients. What would you like to say to our clients right now?
To our current clients?
Current clients, yeah.
Current clients, surrender to the process and always be antithetical. ABA, that's my new thing now.
Always be antithetical. So basically, if you are seeing something that you don't understand, don't go
resist it.
Well, let me tell you my point. Go, what am I missing? What could I be
Learn on
missing?
yourself.
How could I be wrong here? And learn from that. Because obviously what you know today has gotten you to where you are, not a good place. So stop latching on to your old ideas and stop resisting new ideas.
100%.
Resist your old ideas. Latch on to new ideas, right?
Absolutely.
How about prospects? People who are trying to apply, people who are going through very difficult scenarios. What would you say?
I would say, I know it probably seems pretty unreal because I did, and I was the most cynical, skeptical person, like you wouldn't even believe. But I would say this is going to be the thing that you need, that you don't even realize that you need, but it is the thing that you need, and it's going to be tough. But take the plunge and put in everything, and you will reap the results beyond what you thought is possible. And that is truly from like my heart. I know it sounds salesy, but it is truly what I believe.
I mean,
that's what I would say.
Here's something that a lot of people don't understand too, right? It's like, Chris, actually, you had your own business at that point. You're a freelancer. You had your own thing. You had your own gig. You left that to explore the unknown territory that's working with us and me and etc. Right? So
jumped in with both feet.
And just think about that, guys, right? Just think about from a skeptic all the way to there. You get a question, what are you missing here? So I encourage you to explore, guys. But that's it. Chris, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
See you in a bit.
Always a pleasure.